Mitti Ke Rang presents Humans of Mitti Ke Rang, a series of interactive live sessions with people doing exceptional work in their domain. Today we have with us Ms. Shifa Sharif, the founder of The Culinary Cat. An architect turned cake artist, The Culinary Cat was born out of Ms. Shifa's love for baking. Ms. Sharif is also a strong believer of communities and loves to be called as people's walking, talking yellow pages. Tune in to know more about her life experiences and her journey so far as an entrepreneur. You were an architect before. How and when did you make the switch from an architect to a baker and entrepreneur?
It's a funny story actually. So I've been baking ever since I was maybe 13 or something like that. And I've had a lot of influence of other people baking in my life. So, I've sort of grown up around it. And towards the end of my architecture course, I was considering doing this as a side business. But what happened was, after I finished my course, I finally started working full-time at a firm. And on day 4 of my new job, I decided that this is not working for me anymore. So literally 4 days into my profession, I quit that job because I couldn't handle the timings. The work was not, it was just not satisfying work for me. And I immediately came home that afternoon and I started working on this business. I started designing my menu. I started working on, the items. I started to figure out the scope of my work and everything. And I luckily had a lot of supportive friends who helped me with this initial process. And next thing I knew, I walked into my house about a week later and started giving out my business cards to my parents. And they were pretty stunned. They're like, when did this happen? How did this happen? And we had guests at home, so they couldn't even yell at me at that time. So it was pretty great, I would say.
Convenient.
Very convenient.
So, how did you come up with the name, The Culinary Cat? I've got a little bit of an idea, but still, if you could tell us.
So we've been a household of cats for a very long time now, and I think all of us just have grown up around them, and I think we all just connect to them on some level or the other. So I had a brainstorming session with a group of my friends trying to figure out a name for this business. And, what I realized was a lot of people were suggesting names related to desserts. And I didn't want to confine myself to that. I said, no, I'm not going to put myself in that box. Let it be something that's really versatile and something that, that speaks to me. And I just sort of liked the ring that, the Culinary Cat had to it. So, yeah.
I think I can absolutely relate because my mom and I are the same. My Instagram
great.
Is
Cat person, unite.
my Instagram handle is Aakho Wali.
Yeah, I can sense the connect now. I think we're just vibing to a whole different level.
That's amazing. So, do you think there are any similarities between architecture and baking? How do you put that education to use here, if you do?
Actually, surprisingly, I've used more of my architectural skills in baking than in architecture itself. I think the course sort of gives you that eye for detail. It gives you that eye for makes you a little bit of a perfectionist in a lot of ways. It builds your patience to a whole different level because that is not an easy course to do. So and interestingly enough, I did work at a commercial kitchen for a few months back in Chennai. And even today, sometimes my colleagues from there get in touch with me. There's been a time where they've literally gotten in touch with me, to help them with a large tiered cake order. So as the architect in me was helping them, get the structures designed for that thing. So in a way, I'm really glad I did architecture and then switched to this, because it does hone a lot of your skills, which you end up subconsciously using in this business as well. And I think that's quite underrated. So it's I think it's like an Indian parent thing, that stigma that you studied so much, but why are you doing something unrelated to your field? But I'm so glad I did that. Like, I think it just makes me appreciate what I'm doing a lot more.
Amazing. So, another thing that you would like to go by when it comes to your baking is taste trumps aesthetic. So, explain that to us.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. So I have lost track of the number of events that I've attended where, like, weddings or birthdays or a whole bunch of events where, the dessert tables or the cakes that they have on display, they look fabulous. They look absolutely amazing. But nobody wants to eat them, not because they don't want to destroy such a beautiful thing, but because they taste like crap. And if you're going to tell me that, I'm going to have like a pretty little showpiece, then I'm going to say, why do you want to waste food over it? There are 100 different media through which you can show that beauty. But if you're going to do it through food, you better make that food go to good use. And, that's something like in general, like I don't believe in wastage of resources of any sort. Which is why, unlike many bakers, I have like a very strict no fondant policy. Like, if you're familiar with what fondant is, it's basically edible clay. Looks great, tastes like crap. And, that's a waste of my time, my client's money, a whole bunch of resources for something that's just going to be tossed aside in the trash anyway. So I would rather, go that extra mile, work an additional couple of hours on a design to make it work without fondant, rather than, put that fondant, make my life easy and like make a quick buck. But it's just not something that I believe in. And like, if something tastes good, your clients will definitely come back. But if something just looks good, they'll call you for that one event of theirs, and that's it. They're obviously they're gonna want to try someone else different. And end of the day, guys, you're eating cake. You're not gonna eat a showpiece. It better taste like good cake, yeah.
Absolutely. So, you also said that you had to juggle a lot between two cities when you started off your business. So, why did it happen, and how did you finally settle?
Yeah, so that was due to personal reasons. So I was actually married earlier. Up until earlier this year, I was living in Chennai because that's where my ex-husband's family was from. And so I started the business towards the end of 2015, and in early 2017 is when I got married and I had to move. So I had to put the business on hold for almost like a whole year, to sort of get settled, get used to a new city. And it's always easy to build a business in your home city where you know so many people, your friends, your colleagues, your classmates, relatives. So it's very easy to get word of mouth out there like in no time. But when it's an entirely alien city and you don't know anyone there, I think it took a long time for me to build the business up from scratch over there again. And luckily my in-laws at the time, they were quite supportive of my career choices. And my co-sister was the first one to give me a proper order over there. She trusted me with her son's second birthday and that too at that time. So that was like a great opportunity that helped me get the word out to a lot of her friends in Chennai and things like that. And but obviously a lot of my client base was from Bangalore. So, and I would travel to Bangalore a lot on other work as well. So I would literally take one order, like one weekend I would be doing an order in Bangalore, another weekend I'd be doing an order in Chennai. And incidentally, anytime someone called for an order, they'd be like, okay, I need a cake in Chennai on this date. And I'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm not available on that date. And, it was like a lot of traveling, juggling between appointments, between personal life, between at that time I was working on an architectural project also. So, it was like a lot of balls in the air. And now that I'm back in Bangalore, I think I'm slowly setting my business. It's going in the direction that I wanted it to go from day one. And I've had a lot of support from everyone around me. So that's just been great. And especially now because of the lockdown, I think I must be the only person who's been so grateful for the lockdown, because everyone is stuck at home. everyone wants something to eat, but a lot of places are closed. And you know for a fact that when you're going to come to a home-based business, there are a very limited number of people handling your food. So, I mean, it's been a huge blessing for me to, be able to provide people with stuff to keep them happy. Like so many people, especially during the lockdown, they've been, quite frustrated with the fact that they're not able to connect with their loved ones. And, so me sending a cake on their behalf has sort of, like, I would like to look at it as my business is a mental health essential. So, it's been great. It's been really great. It's been picking up quite well. The city in general has been very welcoming of the culinary cat. So, yeah.
And just so you know, we're seeing a lot of positive comments. There's one that says by Savio Joseph. He says, "Hey Shifa, come back to Chennai. We miss your amazing dessert." And another person also said, "I wish everybody just banned fondant."
Yeah, I hear that a lot. It's amazing. But so that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, everyone has a different taste when it comes to these things. Some people do prefer aesthetics over, other stuff. So, like for that, I am very happy to recommend them to another local baker that I know. Or, someone like, see, there are so many people who come to me asking for gluten-free desserts or health-conscious desserts. And that's something that I don't do. And I'm not going to just take up an order, just for the heck of it, when I myself am not sure if I'm doing the right thing. So I would any day rather pass on the order to another, home baker who is doing this and doing this well. And that sort of builds a community as well, right? Like, it's not that every client that comes to me, I have to capture them. No, in fact, they will be more appreciative of the fact that I'm open to directing them to the right person. And they will come back to me maybe for another occasion for the simple reason that they know what I'm talking about, right? So it works both ways. It's a win-win situation for the client, for me, as well as whoever I pass the business on to.
Right. So before I move on to the next question, a word for our viewers. If you have any questions for Shifa, please comment them down below and we'll get to them later. And next question is about you and your personality more. So you said you want to be known as people's walking, talking yellow pages. Why is that?
Absolutely. So if you have, I'm sure since you're in this field of, which has a lot to deal with social media, a lot to deal with people, you would have had that moment of connecting two absolute strangers together. And you would have had the opportunity to see that the outcome of doing that, like two people who would have probably never crossed paths if it wasn't for your presence in their life. It doesn't necessarily have to mean, like in terms of personal relationships. It doesn't have to necessarily mean in terms of business relationships. It can literally be anything under the sun. And the kind of satisfaction that you see from, some kind of progress being made because you were able to connect someone to something. And it also doesn't necessarily have to mean connecting two people together. You can connect someone to a service, you can connect someone to a product that you're aware of. If it is in some way, bringing some positive change in someone's life, then why wouldn't you want to do it, right? And obviously there's the other little selfish part where, I just want to know a lot of people. Like, I just like knowing that, I know that person. I know someone who can get that done for you. I know exactly where you can go to get that part of your requirements sorted. So it's one of those win-win situations for everyone. So.
Right. So you also said you are a strong believer of community over competition. So please explain that to us.
Absolutely. So I don't think anything good comes out of being extremely competitive. You might make it maybe in the short run, but in the long run, your business is not just about business. It's also projecting your business values out there, your personal values out there. And in the long run, if you're going to always be focusing on competition rather than community, it's going to be like a very lonely place on top over there. It's not a fulfilling place to be at. And especially now, I mean, I think this pandemic has been like a whole bunch of life lessons rolled into one. Like, for instance, so many people were struggling trying to source basic raw materials, whether it was for their personal use, whether it was for their business use, including myself. Like, because a lot of stores are closed and there was a lot of confusion regarding what is considered essential, what is considered non-essential, stuff like that. So, if there are 10 people who don't know how to get something done, and if there is one person who knows and is willing to come forward to, help these 10 people, then that is 11 people benefiting from this, rather than one person saying that, no, I'm going to stick to my resources. Why should I share my secrets? Why should I think? Yes, obviously trade secrets are a different issue, but you can also, build on community without having to compromise on your trade secrets. And yeah, like I said, during lockdown, I think that's been the biggest testimony to how much community matters over competition. And see that you have literally nothing to lose by empowering another person. You literally have nothing to lose. So why not?
So coming to last few questions from my side, how do you make sure that your fellow entrepreneurs are being supported, and what do you do to help them?
So stuff like this, like in this day and age, we have a lot of communities being formed, whether it's online, offline. You have 101 WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, and at any given point of time, someone always has some questions, some doubts, some they're struggling with something or the other. And one way is to sort of direct them in the right way, like in a way that's going to help their business or help them personally. That is one way. Then second way, like I mentioned, like if some client comes to me with a requirement that is not my forte, I will automatically direct them to someone who can do it better. And that way I know I'm supporting a fellow business. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean a home baking business. Like for instance, I know another small business owner who deals with succulents and cacti and terrariums and things like that. And when I get a client who comes to me and says, okay, you know what, I have a baby shower and I'm trying to think of return gifts. Now, I always give them an option where they can either go for hampers made by me, like edible hampers. At the same time, I will also give them options where they can connect to these other vendors, for more ideas. And like that way, again, it's supporting another business. And I know when I support another business, tomorrow going down the line, they're going to support me back in return. They will have clients that come to them saying that, okay, you know what, I have an event, I want to give return gifts for this, and they can say, you know what, like if you haven't yet fixed on your baker, you can obviously contact this person. So it works both ways, like, and like even there are so many instances, like, again, one of the negative things about having so many communities, and especially online communities, is that you come across a whole bunch of trolls. I mean, someone is waiting to pull somebody down all the time. And when you have that kind of, that intention of supporting your fellow business owners, you will stand up for them, and they in turn will stand up for you. Again, coming back to the pandemic, like initially there was so much of flack being thrown at bakers who were still continuing to take orders, or people were like, no, this is not an essential thing, and they were being absolutely abusive about it and saying that people are so selfish trying to just make money, without understanding that yes, obviously everybody has their commitments, and just because it's not an essential item for you does not mean that it's not essential for somebody else. And like especially things like breads and stuff like that, which was a little scarce to source initially. Now, of course, like I said, right, I consider my business a mental health essential, because I know the number of clients who have contacted me during this time because they are not able to reach out to their loved ones personally. And if this is some way that they can, then why not? If you're not putting anybody at risk, if you are taking your safety precautions, and you are not sort of hampering other essential services in the process, you're not taking away from that, then why not? You're just doing something nice, and that's all it needs to be, really.
Absolutely, really well said. With that, we'll check out some of the questions from our viewers. Starting with Joy, he asked, 5 years down the line, where do you see yourself and your business?
So Interestingly enough, at one point of time, I did plan on having an outlet, as in like a full-fledged cafe or restaurant or something like that. But having worked in that kind of a setup, I think that has changed my mindset a lot. So probably 5 years down the line, I would like to have a commercial kitchen, yes, but I would like to be known for my bespoke items rather than, just another home baker churning out things by the dozen or stuff like that. And like, when so something really lovely happened yesterday where a client of mine who hasn't ordered from me in ages, someone ordered a cake for her, and and she didn't know where it was from. She didn't know anything. But the minute she saw it and the minute she tasted it, she immediately messaged me saying that I knew this was a Culinary Cat product the minute I had it in my hands. And when you hear something like that, where people are actually recognizing you for your brand, for the quality and for the taste and for the aesthetics, I think if I can do that on a large scale level 5 years down the line, nothing like it. And maybe not 5 years down the line, but maybe 10 years down the line, you might see a book on your shelf that says, the Culinary Cat. So fingers crossed.
Really, really hope so. Waiting to read it. Next question. What are the obstacles you have faced in the initial stages of starting the Culinary Cat?
Oh, that's going to be a long one. So, as you know, Indian families have a lot of stigma when it comes to education. So I was on the other end of the spectrum, especially in my community where you don't really have that many women working and things like that. Mm-hmm. My parents went to the other extreme where they wanted me to do more. They wanted me to be really successful and have like a bustling career and all of that. And for them to come to terms with the fact that I have done a 5-year professional course and then taken an absolute detour into something that didn't really need the course at all. I think that was like a hard pill for them to swallow, but over the years they've been really supportive about it. They've been it took a while, but yeah. So like for someone in that kind of a position where you're completely switching fields and you're from a brown family, obviously that's going to be like a huge deal. And other than that, like I think a lot of the initial issues had more to do with logistics, which luckily today I think that's just been sorted out for us thanks to all these third partner delivery apps and things like that. Like those were always the main issues. And luckily for me, since I'm based out of Bangalore, the market is just ripe for the picking. I mean, everyone, it's not hard to find clients. So yeah, but like initially, so more than the initial days, like I said, like starting out in a completely different city, not knowing anyone, that was like quite a struggle. Like for that, I like you especially in something where you're highly dependent on clients, constantly trying to build new clients. Like I had to go all out, like tap every form of social media that I could think of. Bug all my neighbors, bug all my ex-husband's friends, bug literally anyone and everyone that I could think of. Bug people in Bangalore who knew people in Chennai to sort of get the ball rolling. So yeah, those are the initial scruples, I would say.
Vyomi asks, this is a question even I want to know the answer to. What is your favorite dessert during this long lockdown? Something you wouldn't mind having every day?
I make a pretty mean death by chocolate cake, so I would say that, followed by donuts, which is something very new to my menu, but like I think it's pretty damn addictive. So if anyone here wants to order, like I mean, those are the two items you should be getting on board with.
I think someone has already ordered that tank cake. I'm not sure.
Okay.
One for me for the 21st of December.
Absolutely. Please do get in touch. Please send me a direct message. I will respond to you right away.
Okay. Similar question to before. When can we see you serving to a large number of people? Or when do you plan on taking Culinary Cat to a whole new level?
I think there's no definitive answer to this at this point because I think all businesses right now are in a big question mark state of being, thanks to the lockdown and the pandemic and things like that. And I think it's too soon to tell what life is going to look like having adapted to the pandemic, at least, till things settle down and stuff like that. So let's see how that goes. I mean, if I have clients like you that keep coming and ordering and help me, build up my investment capital to scale up, then nothing like it. So, like, really, how and when I scale up depends on you guys.
And I would just like to say there are so many amazingly positive comments coming in about wishing you all the best for your book, which you actually thought 10 years down the line, but you've already got so many best wishes. One person said, please include the Death by Chocolate recipe. Coming to the final question for this session today. What are some tips you would like to give to other people also wishing to be entrepreneurs someday?
Honestly, you have to be willing to put in the work. I mean, I have seen so many people start out their own businesses but not give it the time and energy and patience that it requires, and obviously it's gonna go belly up. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Like, you just have to give it the time. You have to be ready for sleepless nights. You have to be ready for days where you want to, like, seriously go either hit your head against the wall or your client's head against the wall. And you have to be willing to get up, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start again the next morning. I think like, being an entrepreneur requires like a heavy amount of stubbornness and like a thick skin, a very thick skin.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kripa, for joining us today. This was a very, very interesting session. Thank you for sharing your story with us, your experiences with us, and we hope to see that book
for having me. Absolutely, I'm going to be working towards that.
Thank you so much, and with that, we've reached the end of our session today. Okay.